So wonderful for all of you to join on such short notice. Thank you. It's awesome to see faces and be here with you all. I feel like we might as well get rolling.
Okay.
Great to see you.
All right. Max, you want me to start? I'll start. Okay. Listen, everyone, welcome tonight to this really important. I'm not sure what it is. I think there's not a word in my mind to honor Mark in a way that he deserves that's bigger than the words that we have. I just want everyone to know what a big, giant influence he's been in our lives, especially mine. So I want to welcome everyone to tonight's December Hoot for the Robert Frost Foundation, honoring creator, executive director, leader, and mentor of the Robert Frost Foundation, Mark Schorr. Tonight, his son Max Schorr will lead his family members through the wonder of Mark's work as a poet. He is not only a masterful poet, but with his PhD from Harvard in literature, he was also a scholar of immense clarity and wisdom, and to me was by far the most skillful and knowledgeable academic I ever met, who challenged me with every conversation about writing. He taught many years at Cambridge College, and his legacy goes far beyond many avenues of academic excellence. A great man leaves behind memories of a great life. Let us tonight please honor Mark Schorr as his beloved family escorts us through his brilliant life. I will begin by introducing our current executive director, Mark's son, Max Schorr. Max, begin.
Thank you. And I'll politely defer that I'm just a board member. I'm not the executive director, but wonderful to be here. And thank you so much, Harry, for those warm words. And
Sure.
I'm actually going to pass to my mother to start things off. So over to you, Nan.
Okay, I'll pass it over to you. I had a new plan a few minutes ago, and that was that I was going to I'm going to start reading by a geographical plan, starting with the Shawsheen River and going to the Merrimack. And I had been thinking of reading some elegies because I think some of Mark's really most beautiful poem are his elegies. But then I decided it was family night, and so I'm going to embarrass my children a little bit instead, and include some family poems that I also like. But I'm going to start with a poem that is a river poem, to the Shawsheen. Uh, Winding through lots, through water tables and scraggly marshes as best as able, unplugging plugs, undumping dumps for their removal, winding eternal a culvert stream, Shawsheen, Shawsheen, prettiest river we've ever seen. There is a vale, slow as a snail, bend in a river, hard by a rail, picks up a trail along a bay, puts in a kayak, is bound away, a culvert stream, Shawsheen, Shawsheen, prettiest river we've ever seen. In mill ponds, there is time and a first sign of current from mountains of snow, piled high all around, and a first spring day reflects the ridges, down to bridges through city and town. At the base of the park, by a bend in a river, by a park, there's a poem that showed up today on a map. By a pond, by a portage, as we headed this way. And the poem is the river, and the poem is the day. And so we'll start. There's actually, Mark has a poem about a stream. And what's the name of the stream again, Max? Rogers Brook. Rogers Brook in the backyard, but I won't read that. We'll go with the Shawsheen. And starting from our house in Andover. Mark loved innovation, and he had the idea that he could paint the porch ceiling. And when he painted the porch ceiling, he added some geese. And then after he had visited Montaigne's castle in Akim, he saw that Montaigne had even more decorating his ceiling in his study in the castle. And so he added more, and he added more to the poem as well, a second coat to the poem and a second coat to the ceiling. But here's the painting, the first poem, Painting the Porch Ceiling, first coat. Begin with borders of a cloud that look like edges of a tent. Shake out the corners of the sky that will not blow away. Locate the middle of a flock of Escher geese that will now trace unruly arcs from every corner, every quarter of the sky. This flock of geese, mid-flight turning, a world of wonders to the eye, an Escher pattern, a porch ceiling, a flock of geese flying by. There on the porch, this flock of geese, an Escher pattern for the eye. And here comes the second poem, Painting the Ceiling, second coat. And I hope I can emphasize, if you look at the poem, you'll see that there's part of the poem is in black, dark, bold in the middle. So it's a poem. The original poem is inserted in the middle, and then the Montaigne's ceiling poem is around it. Montaigne's ceiling begins with borders of a cloud, is painted in such a way to have the bon mot that look like edges of a tent always in view. As if to remind us to stake out the corners of the sky, this smiling public man would say, I must hold back, that will not blow away, I will not budge. And on the death of his father, locate the middle of a flock. At 38, Montaigne retired from the law at Bordeaux of geese and settled himself on his estate that now will trace unruly arcs at some remove in an ancient tower from every corner, every quarter of the sky at Achim. Though he had been this flock of geese, a man of pleasure and a courtier, in mid-flight turning, his studious habits now grew. He loved the compass, a world of wonders for the eye, and his independence made him an Escher pattern, Frank. He took up his economy and made his farms an artful turning, a model, a plain dealer who abhorred to be deceived or to deceive for the eye. All parties freely came and went, an Escher pattern, admiring his open doors, a flock of geese, the neighboring lords brought, flying by, jewels, honors, and awards. And I'm going to move on from the porch ceiling to a poem that about Sarah in a way. When she was just an infant in a snuggly, Mark decided he couldn't wait to bring her to see the glass flowers at the Museum of Natural History at Harvard. So this is his poem, Glass Flowers. Unlike most who come to see the glass flowers for what seems like hours, backpacking makes your fun. The letter I brings you this program, so you are itsy bitsy spider and want to hit or miss. Before you sniff a single flower, you are Oscar the Groucho until a bottle quiets you, my little bee, who naps an hour, while I count leaves of grass inside every glass case. So Sarah's 3 years older than Max. She was an infant in a snuggly in this one. And Max is just a flicker on the screen in this one. He wasn't born yet. And in fact, this is just a hint of Max to come. And the poem is called Amniocentesis. Mark said that the poem came to him fully formed when he was driving home from work one day and he had to pull up the car by the side of the road and write it down. Amniocentesis for my son. Oh, and he also calls it his Bright Star poem after Keats. Bright star, you strain to pass your news to us, and we interpret you as best we can. Count your auras to know you're there, and that you seem to conform to all that imagination knows. Though you're still signal in our minds, you will stop short of what eyes can picture on the clearest night. As that proud king transported news to Galilee to find his wildest dreams surpassed around a star, so driving home tonight, I wish myself as close as you are still, and that I could impart in form as free your information as you still seem to be. And another poem for Sarah, who is now in this poem graduated and from high school. And,
Carol? Oh, I thought you might have left.
okay, so here's
No, I'm just carrying it
Alex,
around.
you need to mute.
I
you
never
need-
got onto it really.
You need to mute. Okay, so this is ABCdery from my daughter. And Sarah's now in her first year at college. From your first year at college comes an ABCdery of paintings. You would not have me hang at all. That now ABC's my study wall. Not necessarily to praise, but simply to fill my walls with reports of what you've seen, of places where I haven't been. A, starting with A, that fills the blue cup, a painted horizon on a table that stands up tall. B, then B as in être, in the flower and the leaf, and drowsier lilies half asleep that acquire a life of their own. C, then C, in the red of the table that takes on shades of afternoon, not in a constant color, but one worn as in love or pain. D, E. For D and E in your ABCdery, you look to Matisse and find not only fish within fish bowls, but paintings within paintings. F, for the F, almost a treble clef of Braque or Mondrian, where sharp lines and somber colors point to other ways of seeing. G, H, while G and H are strokes awash with rowers and rivers there, and distance from the Connecticut shores that gather strokes of force and power, all build to an alphabet where lily is not fixed to water any more than point of view is fixed in mixing fire and air. I, J. The distance between I and J is as close, some say, as the space between I and thou. So the stern taskmistress who has brought these paintings forth from you must know. And having stolen a week with these tableaux, I know how much they must have cost in energy, time, and discipline to catch the corner of the beholder's eye. K, L, M, N, O. So then onwards to K, L, M, N, O, amid the variables of volume, luminosity, and mass. The lemons are too ripe, so not lifelike, and leave me wondering what the light was like. And the green cylinder's mass asks how much more solid than the plastic pot, how many of the stripes that line the wavy mattress surpass the notion of their task. P, Q, R, or take P as the lily of a particular day that accrues from generous peach along with Q. Both sing nothing, if not the blues of R, whose color is rose. Far-fetched? Who knows? S, T. S and T are the opposite qualities. Still, color is not an issue because depth takes over and one gets lost in the beauty of it until a better guide, complexity, restores a rose-like lily to my responsible gaze. The way the cellophane tape rendered in its dispenser is mysterious, as if it dispenses itself in solid liquid as a whole continuum of life, and in spite of itself and its solid background, becomes its opposite. That's paradox for you. U, V, W, X, Y, Z. U, V, W, X, Y, and Z, the rest can all be found in the body-stockinged figure tensing and relaxing as she mysteriously finds her space somewhere above the floor. With tension paradoxically present, just as it is time to relax and think of this wall of yours in front of me, going to places I have come to see. The next poem, predictably, is for Max, and this is called Golf Dreams on Father's Day. Why do my son and I now seem to live reclining on twin living room couches, only for the next hole in front of the television? Why do we dream of the tiger stalking his prey? Why do we watch the white ball suspended in the air? Sometimes a basic confusion between sport and life is healthy, Roger Angel says. And so at times I willingly play out on the miniature links because soon enough there will be the wedge that doesn't fly, or the chip that goes awry, or a putt that veers off at such an angle, even the warriors flashing the latest titanium must pause along with duffers, digging out from under the latest bunker, a half an hour to reflect, but most of all, to dream golf dreams. So then I wanted to move along to Lawrence, if I can find those poems. Hold on one sec. North Andover. Oh, yes, I can. I can go to North Andover anyway. Let's see. And then where are these other ones? Okay, here we go. So, moving along to Lawrence on the Merrimack. These are lines for the rededication of the Robert Frost circulating fountain on Lawrence Common. As of course, everybody who's involved with the Lawrence Robert Frost Foundation knows that Robert Frost thought of Lawrence as his hometown, graduated from Lawrence High School, was co-valedictorian with his future wife, Eleanor White. So this is Lawrence, lines for the rededication of the Robert Frost circulating fountain on Lawrence Common. Another interesting fact, though, about the Lawrence Common is that it was partly designed by Olmsted, and Mark had a great fondness for the Oaks and the Olmsted parks, Jackson Park and South Park, where he grew up. They were like an extension of his family house. Unlike your wilder cousin, West Running Brook, who cuts loose every spring without a backward look, you must wait up for the parks and recreation team to prime your pump. So still you seem. Only then will you play and run all summer long among whoever comes your way to hear your song. No matter, 1 hour's water over rock is worth 1,000 garden hoses. So recirculate on this granite block for the love of bread and roses. So I have some other poems along the Merrimack, specifically a really long one about Lowell, but I think it would be good to have a break and have pass this over to Sarah perhaps, and then Max. Sarah, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Sophie and Iris are there too. Wonderful. Hi.
I have some smaller versions too. So this is Sophie and Iris. My son is still in Denmark. And first, I just wanted to say, Harry, what a beautiful introduction. It was just really nice to hear those words. So thank you so much. I have so many things I want to say, but I will actually start by saying that my whole life, my dad would show me something or say some words and sort of prompt creativity. And after he died, his words still stay in my head from time to time, fragments of his poems. And so recently in some of my own work, I'm a visual artist, I started working with some of the fragments that sort of get stuck as I work. So if I have the capability to share, I'm going to put one of the images on the screen while I read. Let me see if I am allowed to do so. Looks like I can. Okay, great. So I'm going to read a poem called Baba Yar, and it was a sort of echo and conversation with Yevtushenko's 1961 poem called Baba Yar. But this is my dad's sort of response and conversation from his own trip there. It has been too long since we have talked about the walk around that place outside of Kiev, where so much happened, we would just as soon had not. But even there, imagining the worst, with hardly a monument or official sign of comfort, with ravens circling the uneven ditches, barely scythed in their bulldozed state, far from our children, home and safe. As I remember it, you passed me on the path until you caught up with me and others, and without saying anything, all of us embraced as if to say, this is a century. This is a place someone will try to wash away unless we remember it here and mourn forever. Okay. And now I'm going to switch to some of his recovery poems. They're very short, and I'm just going to read two. But I wanted to say that, some of you may be going through some recovery yourself or not, or know someone. And one of the things that touched me about these poems, going back to them, is how he certainly did not enjoy being sick, but it very quickly became something to kind of bounce off of and use for fuel for his work. And so this is number 6 from Recovery. All of these machines resolve signals behind a screen, into the jazz of day following leads, looking seaward for the perfect wave, P wave again, here on the beach of momentary loss. Okay. And this is 71. Sits on the corner of his unmade bed, making order instead. Photos of an unmade life, quite like an unmade bed. Cannot sit around for long, listening to irregular rhythm, but must paint instead. If the corners are unmade, paint imagined corners instead. Okay, now I'm going to stop the share. And just that's pretty much it for me. But Iris, my daughter here, is going to read a really short one that kind of reminds us, is from Recovery as well, but kind of reminds of the humor also, even when he was sick. So, go ahead. Yeah, nice and loud. That's the front page. Good point.
In a morning light, purple emerald necklace, pinpricks on fingers 6.
Did you hear that? Do
Good.
you want it one more time louder?
Or one more time would be great.
One more time, super loud.
A little bit slower. In a morning light, purple emerald necklace, pinpricks of fingers 6.
Okay, great. Okay, and now we're going to pass the mic to Max, so to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting where like emotion comes from or where memory comes from. But seeing all of you here is really wonderful because my father just loved other people and he loved connecting with other people. He loved other people's creativity and he loved life. And so, yeah, I can echo my sister's prompt of, his prompts that he kind of always had like a curled up piece of paper with some brilliant half finished poem in his pocket that he would offer gladly to anyone who came by. And sometimes it was kind of the poetry of listening, like how he would just, when I was a little kid, we'd be in CVS for like 20 minutes having a conversation. I've been trying to explain that to my wife, how he would literally have like a 20-minute conversation with a stranger. And, but he felt it was so important to hear their story. And he kind of, and I love that. And I love kind of all that I remember of him, even though at the time I felt probably embarrassed and a little bit exacerbated. But the last words he said to me on his deathbed, and it was kind of a self-conscious deathbed when he knew he was dying, was we were laughing and we had been singing and we were all kind of surrounding him with love. And he saw me smiling and he said, "I love it when you smile." And so I felt like that was like a final prompt from him of, find your creativity, live your life, and if you smile, you'll know that I'm sort of there cheering you on, which I would have known even if he hadn't said that. But I think he could find the right words, and there's something so beautifully like professional about him as a poet, but also completely amateur, where he was always kind of starting fresh and working on the early draft, but it kind of came out just so, but it still was most fun for him. And then I think he'd trade it all in for what he called the poetry of life. And anyhow, I don't want to ramble too much, but I want to kind of prompt my sister as a bridge from her poetry to a couple that I'll read. Um, we were recently in Chicago and we went to the Art Institute and we saw the beautiful painting that's on the wall there by Monet called Irises. And it was he grew up in Chicago and his parents took great effort to educate him and bring him to all these cultural institutions. And right when he was maybe 9 or 10 years old, the Art Institute acquired that painting, Irises. Um, it had actually been painted around the time of World War One in a sort of offering of peace, I believe, to France. But then it was found having some shrapnel in it from I can't remember if it was World War One or World War Two, but it had been rehabilitated and brought to Chicago, and we can imagine him seeing it as a young guy, um, and his mother's name was Iris, and then Sarah's youngest daughter is named Iris. And Sarah, if you could just share like how he took you to Monet's garden, or there's some like breadcrumb there that I'd love you to share.
Okay. So yes, when we were little, he and my mom took us to Giverny, to the home of Claude Monet. And I remember being super grumpy about it because we were going over these cobblestone roads and I got really car sick and I thought, what could ever be worth this? This is just torture. And, my dad was excited about everything. So I just figured it could be anything. But when we got there, it was this incredible pink house and we walked to the water garden. And this was an incredibly important moment for me in retrospect because it was the first time I saw that art could be a life, that, Claude Monet was not born with money or anything. He just made his work and made his work. And he did happen to be an artist that was discovered in the course of his life, and became very, very able to support himself and families and generations after his death, of course. Um, and I know I'm going somewhere here, but so in the last few years, I've been the artist in residence at Claude Monet's house in Giverny, and I think this links to the poem that my mother read about the ABCs. He actually had something about, he mentions Matisse, but obviously there are some water lilies in there. And I don't know. So I also feel this sort of presence of him, and that he kind of sort of enchanted us with his creativity and his sort of sparkle. So I'm going to lead it back to you, Max. But thanks.
I kind of have this experience of just constantly experiencing new poems of his, and some are familiar, some are new. And this was one that I'm going to read first that I didn't know so well, but then I read it and I can see so many different points of connection. And I want to give a shout out to my Aunt Daphne, my dear Aunt Daphne, who's here. It's so nice to see you, Daphne. Um, Daphne and my mother's uncle, Rudy, when he was just about, I think he might have been 20 years old or so, died storming the banks of Normandy, as part of World War II, serving for Canada. And it was my grandmother's only brother. And my grandmother had been born in a battle park in France. Her father had been commissioned to build that left the trenches intact. And some of her earliest memories were the old people then saying, "This is the war to end all wars. After World War One, we can't do this again." But sure enough, her only brother, passed away. There, and this was some visit. I love the local poems you read, Mom. And then he also, whenever my father traveled, there'd be poems that would show up along the way. And this was a trip to kind of see those parts in France. And It's called Again Got Clear. This year we repaired to Omaha +10, and the beach where Claire's brother perished early on. Sarah and Max walked in a straighter line when they heard about who this uncle had been, and it registered that a grandfather had been there too. They saw how the site of the great beachfront fell into a slight bulge much further down, and who was surrounded, and how many years after it happened, again got clear. From there to Giverny, where a little bridge would go, where the painter who refused his second sight recorded every morning's changing light, past well-mowed fields of poppies and McDowell. History began to know us well. Her name was Mont Saint Michel. And my father's father was serving in World War II when my father was born, and he was there as a doctor. And what I recall hearing was he was a general practitioner who operated in the south side of Chicago, and he would take fruit and vegetables for payment or anything. He would see whoever had an ailment, and he was a real humane guy. I can still remember my grandfather's kiss on the cheek, but he had to play a surgeon role in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was there with sort of inadequate instruments to deal with too much suffering. And he came back when my father was little, and anyhow, they sort of made their way through it. But anyhow, that poem hit me for a lot of reasons, but I loved that he was talking about the bridge and the garden where my sister's been spending more time. And he talks about the changing light, and one of the things my sister's really digging into these days is how those paintings and the garden, the state of the garden when Monet lived, how it's changing with the changing of climate, and these attendant gardeners who have been there for 100 years since. It's a really interesting place to have an emotional connection, and to see matter of fact how climate conditions are changing and how art can play a role in documenting it. And so anyhow, it all connects, it finds ways. I was going to read another one called Lowered Voltages. I know we're running a tiny bit short of time and don't want to kind of hammer people over the head with too many poems. But Lowered Voltages was one that I thought was beautiful. It's about traveling. I think I'm going to just skip it to kind of continue on. And I wanted to also try, I'm not certain that this will work, but to just bring my father in. This was a poem that he wrote about a first date with my mother. And I have a little video that my friend Nirvan made in stealth while we were together in LA. I think it was about the last year of my father's life, but he read it to a couple of my friends, and we caught a little candid of him. Let's see if I can share this, if this works. Can anybody see that?
You can see it, yeah.
See if this works. These are the first two of 40 sonnets that chronicle their relationship.
This is the story in poetry form.
I love it.
Water.
This is the first date.
The water at Salisbury Beach was cold, and the Tripoli pizza was eaten in such haste that we could scarcely wait to consummate a love we knew would not grow old. Even now, with flannel trousers rolled, I wonder what we knew then as we raced that afternoon. Our love led a place as sacred as Ganges, but also to a time-bound, make-or-break harbor. Perhaps it was something in the sun and water that told us about the life to come. Or perhaps the perfect afternoon waves and fun told us about the son and daughter. However they told us, we were there, finding how the coldest water warms the air.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, I mean, he'd kind of have a moment and then capture in a poem, and anyhow, and then Ray Landry served on the board with my father of the Frost Foundation for a while, and at some point they went off to Japan and they followed Basho's footsteps. And just this is the last thing I was going to share. Was like my sister said, he was always prompting creativity, and so I have this thing in my email inbox. I don't know if these poems exist anywhere or whatever, but he went off and he was following these footsteps, and he wrote this thing. And he said, "On the left is Basho's narrow path. On the right are my attempts to follow it. Now it's your turn to narrow the path. Find your poetry in every day." And then kind of XO Ba. And then he had some, a bunch of different haiku from Basho, and then some from his. And so I've got he did maybe 12, and then there's about 100 that I'm still working my way through, but I have as a kind of fun little workshop. I'll just read a couple of his, and then maybe so the first one would be, this is Basho. He says, "Passing through the world again, leans to against rain." And then my father says, "My daughter who leans into the rain gives birth to a shining iris." And then I could go back and forth, and they're really fun, but I think you all get the point. And it's just lovely that it's an invitation. And I think the first one that hasn't been echoed or responded to, and tonight is a new moon, so there's no moon, so it just feels a little bit apropos. It says, "No moon tonight," and this is Basho, but it's just a call and an ask to kind of echo this and be in conversation with this poet. He said, "No moon tonight, just a powerful wind blowing through ancient cedars." And so that prompt exists to kind of find some poetic response through words or through life. And that's just a little glimpse of things. So, Mom, I guess I'll pass it back to you.
Oh, I'm so happy to see the people who were here, that it's hard for me not to just want to chat. And thank you for Max for what you read, and Sarah, and thanks to Harry also. So many of the things that Max and Sarah said made me think of little anecdotes of Mark being so discursive but so connected at the same time, that I remember one time going to the theater with a friend and with Mark, and she turned to me and she said, "Mark knows so many people." And I said, "He didn't know any of those people," but he connected with all of them. And a lot of people, when he died, told me that he had been their best friend, and it was mutual. I mean, I think that he cared about them just as much as they cared about him. I hope it's okay do we have time, Karen and Harry, for a longer poem?
Oh, I vote yes.
I don't hear a big.
Harry's there. I
Maybe
vote yes for Harry too.
It'll probably be the last one if it's the one you want to.
the long one. Yeah, I'm more tempted to chat, but I think I will.
Go ahead, Natalie. Go ahead.
It's a real, I have to really get going on this one to make it sound the way he would like it to sound. Bridges to Kerouac. And he wrote this because Songus, who was very important to us for what he did for Lowell, and also Kerouac and Ginsberg come together with Songus in this poem. Songus and Ginsberg died around the same time, and it was at the time of the Kerouac Festival in Lowell. Okay, so I'll try to really get going on this. 1, Songus. Spring day after blizzard, the rock wall oblivious in all the neighborhoods, the dry wall oblivious, the storms pass through. No sign of him on this spring day, O mighty engineer. 2, O stately Belvedere, thinking of Songus, the long lines, all day waiting for the one at home now, the symbol display of family photo and family kindness. O stately Belvedere, this was not in a day's work, almighty engineer. Across Route 38, downtown and around, below the highlands, bridges to Songus. Before the river, the sprawling highlands, the civic auditorium, blue, phallic chimney of the saints. Bright blue memorial, hospital and over, green river roadways, O mighty engineer. 4, ring around the river. Ring around the river, along the outer highway. Spring along the river, my business is typography. Ringing bridges rebuilt, the guard locks passed, the stone walls passed, the mighty canals passed, the baseball diamonds passed, the parklands passed, the cock bridges passed, the 100 tons passed, the Pawtucket Falls rushing, the downward waters rushing against the restraining locks, the mighty untapped energy, O mighty engineer. 5, to services they came. To services they came, waiting in line, the whole day long, the ones to comfort, the ones not willing, the ones not accepting no for an answer. The young congressman, sleeves rolled up, ready to work, setting democratic goals, dream vistas democratic, one among many. Now the strong incense, now the swinging censer, now the deep chanting among the gold shining, Senator Songus, oh mighty engineer. 6, thinking of Ginsburg. Thinking of Ginsburg, crocuses at attention, unaware of battles, the latest blizzard, thinking of Ginsburg, so innocently forming in the dooryards, blue scillas droop, thinking of Ginsburg, or downriver kestrels take off in their flotillas, thinking of Ginsburg, ejecting one by one over Kerouac Park, arcing the moment, thinking of Ginsburg, the traffic cops marching through Lowell, the local youth, thinking of Ginsburg, the good doctor, dreaming of Patterson, father and son, thinking of Ginsburg, coxswain looking down, thinking upriver under Moody Bridge, thinking of Ginsburg, jazzmen jamming on, the May King of Prague Spring, thinking of Ginsburg, the Beat King, chanting, 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 all of Prague shouting, Ginsburg, when recalling him in Mechanics Hall about to read haiku, American sentences taught to him by W.C. Handy, Kerouac by bluesman Burroughs, thinking of Ginsburg, then to hear him reciting W.C. Handy, Blake in his other ear. Walked all night from Easton Lewis, ain't got a rotten dime. Walked all night thinking of Ginsburg, the traveling harmonium, the sunflower sutras. Never weary of thinking of Ginsburg, making the scene, the Rainbow Cafe, morning doves trying, thinking of Ginsburg, oh mighty engineer. 7, then recalling the madness of his mother, ambulance bound, committed, thinking of Ginsburg, the madness of my mother, high on L-Dopa, thinking, dreaming, raging, the man, his big blue serge suit, excluding no one from the conversation. Now, beyond all that jazz, the fire in the liver's Chernobyl no longer rages, but engages us, the early sutras, howls, mantra, the middle sutras, frantically delivered by late visionary loopy language, the illuminations printed on glossy paper, O mighty engineer.
Very good.
Wow. That's amazing. That's the
Very
That
nice.
was wonderful.
feeling of Kerouac and Ginsburg right there.
Can I just say 2 things? First of all, I absolutely love the juxtapositioning of Sarah and Sophie right below Natalie. It's
Oh.
perfect.
Oh.
And I think, Natalie, you and Mark certainly passed your talent to the next generations. You did.
Yeah.
The only thing that was missing was the rhythm of the beat, the music in the background that Kerouac used to have.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. But we heard it in the lines, though, I think,
It's
some of the lines.
There was something I didn't repeat, which I should have, which was it was written to the music. It was Abdullah Ibrahim, a music from an ancient well, if you know that jazz. It was written to jazz music.
That would be good.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Tchaikovsky. I remember that well. Yes. Yeah.
Very nice, Natalie.
Well, the Frost Foundation people are very dear to all of us, and And the whole city of Lawrence, the whole poetry community in Lawrence is a wonder. Thank you all for carrying it on. And Mary Ellen, I'm sorry too, was wonderful, and having Seamus Heaney come way back when, and
Yes.
That
Well,
was-
we all remember that. Yeah,
yeah.
it was wonderful. Right.
And Kevin worked with Mark on a beautiful book that I recommend. Max and I said it was our favorite book. We read it every year, of Seamus Heaney's lecture. He
Poems.
compares his poems, he sort of juxtaposes some with Frost. And at first he said, oh, he couldn't do it, because Frost was such a great poet. How could he compare his poems? But Mark talked him into it. And I think Kevin went to talk to him. Didn't you go to talk to him, Kevin, too?
Yeah, I was over there for I was over in Dublin for a conference, but it was Mark's conception, and he did all the work. He did making a tape of the of Heaney's reading, and doing this amazing transcription of it. Heaney was very impressed with that, and really worked very hard on it, as did Mark. So it was great. It was a great project all around.
Another thing I wanted to mention was that Heaney loved coming to Lawrence. I mean, we would expect that everybody in Andover and Lawrence would be all excited to hear Seamus Heaney. But Mary Ellen, I have to say, your program was so great. He said he loved being on the stage with the dancers from Lawrence High School. He just loved that it was a
Yes. Yeah.
community event.
Yes, it was a great event, and many turned out. Wow, a lot of people. Yeah, it was crowded.
Yeah, that was packed.
Right.
And it was wonderful to see it in the old high school too, using it.
Yeah, and the singers and that Heaney mentions at the beginning of his lecture. So that was really great.
Right.
Did a good job, Mary Ellen.
Yeah. Right.
Next.
It's so nice to see all of your faces. It's so wonderful through all these years. I was telling Natalie via email earlier that I'm so happy that the Hoot continues. Its inception, for those of you who don't know, its inception was, we shamelessly lifted it from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, from a coffee house there. Mark and I had gone up one evening to spy on this event that we'd heard. People had the audacity to be reading poetry in public, and it just seemed like a really great thing that we wanted to do in a local venue and bring it to Lawrence. And it was a great night. And I remember driving back from the Portsmouth Hoot, and just the enthusiasm that we had for this, to be able to say, this, we're going to lift this, we're going to do this, and people are going to come out for it and enjoy it. And, here we are, over 22 years later, the Hoot still continues. And that just makes me so happy. Our first Hoot was going to feature Matt Cronellis, who many of you I'm sure know as one of the original board members for the Frost Foundation, and now the founder of Gray Quartz Poets. And Mark and Ray had taken the famous Mark and Ray show through the Lawrence Public Schools on the morning of September 11th, 2001. And they had just come out from the schools, and they were really excited. And Mark called me up and wanted to talk about the format for the Hoot that evening and what that was going to be like. And I said, Mark, you just wait a minute. You have to get to a television. And he was so excited. He said, oh, the kids love I said, Mark, you've got to get to a television. I don't think we can have a Hoot tonight. And it didn't quite. And then a little bit later on, he called and he said, yeah, I don't think we have a Hoot tonight. so our first hoot was the second Tuesday of October in 2001, to a much different atmosphere than we had originally planned on, for our initial hoot. But here we are 22 years later. And Natalie, thank you for reading the poem about the fountain, because I think that is my favorite poem of Mark's. He just so beautifully captured the voice of Frost in that, and West Running Brook. And that came out of another project that we were doing for the foundation, creating the Robert Frost walking trail. And I remember we were in front of City Hall, where the fountain is, and I think that was the first time that Mark shared that poem with me. And as we were standing there thinking about the different stops on the trail, and I've always loved that poem. So thank you so much for sharing that.
I love the fact that it brings together Robert Frost and Bread and Roses too.
Hmm.
Yes.
Excuse me, Max? Max? Are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Max, would you like me to start the close, or would you like to go on? Or?
Yeah, I think we're definitely wrapping up. I think, I guess, if anybody else feels called to say anything, I think we're planning to kind of wind things down, and you could just close it, Harry. But
Yeah,
just because we don't all gather that often, if anyone else had anything else they wanted to share, and no pressure. I think this has been a beautiful evening, but so wonderful to see all of you. Just keep
I
doing.
I think we're gonna have to do this again.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
there's so much that is left unsaid, and I think in a way, it's better to leave it that way, because I think we honor your father the most by continuing his work. And so we're going to leave it as an open, unfinished page, and we're going to come back to it, because I could go on and on for hours, and we don't have time for that tonight. But I want to thank you and your whole family, the whole family that joined us tonight, because it shows aspects of why he was such a wonderful person. He was a wonderful person to everyone first. He was one of the most outstanding people I've ever met. And he changed my life, like I said before. I want to also mention Jessica Sanchez, who was our executive director for a very short time, who passed away very unexpectedly at a very young age. She would carry Mark's poetry books with her. And she thought the love affair of Mark with his wife, Natalie, was the greatest thing she ever could read. And she would forever read that to me over and over again. And we miss her, and we don't talk about her a lot, but she should be there with us tonight. So as a wrap up, I like to think that we preserve Mark's legacy by preserving the Robert Frost Foundation and reading his poems. And I could go on and on, but I'd like to end with two poems I did for his memorial service, if people don't mind. The first one's called The Poet's Heart. How do you mourn a poet? His poems still speak as they call us out from dusty pages. They twist and turn in our minds, words popping and steering us to a better place. How do you mourn a poet? There are no gravestones for poems. They speak to us in our dreams, comforting us in darkness. They light the love spark. How do we mourn a poet? Poems do not expire. They never say goodbye. There is no need for flowers or tears. The poems are calling us now. How do we mourn a poet? Poems only need to be read to live. All we need to do is thank the poet for showing us that God still smiles when we speak to heaven with words from a poet's heart. And my last poem is written especially for Mark. Again, these are from his service. Mark's poem. We will read the book of poems lovingly crafted. We respect his love of Frost, a poet he revered and cherished. We will ask the students to continue to recite their poems with joy and pain. We will celebrate the joy of well-crafted words, Mark's quiet encouragement for us all to write forever, so that he will be remembered in all the work that comes to us. As he takes selfies in heaven and wishes us well on the road less traveled, he is now with Frost and Seamus. They can write their new poems in a better place and time. And that's my ending for tonight's honoring of Mark Schorr. I thank everybody for coming, and the Frost Foundation will echo his intent, hopefully forever. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Harry.
Harry, and thank you,
Thank you.
Natalie.
Thank you
Um,
so
Thank you,
much.
Barry. That was
Matt.
really nice.
And Sarah.
Thank you.
Beautiful
Great.
readings.
Great seeing
Thank you.
everyone.
Okay,
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
everyone for coming.
okay. Bye now.
Yep, bye.
See you again.
Bye, Natalie. Bye,
We'll
Max.
do it.
Bye-bye.
We'll do it again soon.
Okay, it's a good idea.
I love it. Thank you.